Rachel, thank you for joining us.
It was delightful.
Rachel and I met last spring. She was in town for a friend's birthday party, and she and Gil and all the other attendees of the birthday party got in the swimming pool, but it was like so freezing cold, and I'm like, I am not going in that swimming pool. And granted, it was heated, but my fear is like, well, you got to get out sometime.
Well, there was a hot tub. Most people were in the hot tub daring to go into the actual pool. So, yeah, that was.
But still, that's my nightmare. Like, why would you want to do the getting out was part? Painful. I would have just stayed there and be like, made really good friends with your friend whom I just met that first night. She also made some kind of like cool infused booze. She had a whole closet full of like lemon infused vodka and all kinds of stuff. I was like, I could be her friend.
You know what? I like that you meeting me for the first time is associated with such nice memories. Like, it's nice to be associated with really nicely infused vodka. Like, I'll take that. That's good.
Yeah, of course. It's the lasting memories. And then as I was looking around, I was doing some research to try to figure out, because I remember years ago, there was this big, there was all this contention about yoga teachers saying squeeze your butt too much. So I just started Googling, and the first search result was Rachel's. And I was like, well, that means we got to do an interview. I was also very impressed with your SEO skills for getting way up at the top of I think I must have Googled like yoga teacher squeeze your butt, and there's Rachel.
There it was. That's me, the squeeze your butt person.
So it was 2013, I think. It was 7 years ago that you published this blog post, this article. I like how you describe the gluteus maximus as a noble muscle. Like a huge and happy dog. It loves to work and to get things done. So tell me more about your perception of glute max.
Well, I think that the reason why I was so focused on it, particularly back in 2013, is because I had been neglecting my dog. So my glute max was like a dog that I, wasn't feeding very well, wasn't taking on walks. He was getting sort of fat and lazy and wasn't working so well. So actually, what's interesting is that I needed to take a break from yoga. So I was in Ashtangi for many, many years, right? And so in Ashtanga, there's a lot of hamstring openings. There's a lot of, backline opening. And then, if when you're not in practice, you're sitting on your butt and, doing things. And so my backline became very weak. And so I had to actually stop practicing yoga and basically do squats and lunges for like a year to recover functionality in my body and in my system.
And so, Rachel, when you say backline, you're referring to essentially Tom Myers' superficial backline, this connected series of muscles that line the entire superficial, the entire posterior surface of the body, essentially.
Yeah, although for me, I think my back was probably tight, but my glutes and my hamstrings definitely were like longer, and wouldn't engage dynamically, and so I became very interested in it, and I kind of came up in yoga when everybody was saying don't squeeze your butt. So like in my world in yoga, so it's funny, the pendulum swings, my friend, does it not?
Right.
So when I was doing yoga, it was always like, don't squeeze your glutes, release your butt, like drape your buttocks towards your thighs, it's on all of that kind of stuff. Right. So when I came back, it was when I came back to yoga, I was very much interested in the glutes being part of the practice. And, because yoga's my thing, and there's not a ton of poses in there that we do that really engage the glutes unless you start thinking about it. And I'm hearing it more and more now. But that's what led to that article, was this sense that we actually have to invite the glutes back into the yoga practice in order for the practice to be more well-rounded and functional.
You mentioned you actually suggest recruiting gluteus maximus in locust pose as an example, and you say, and who knows, it might be glorious. I love that. You're just like, tell me more about like the glory of you contracting glutes in locust pose.
Yeah, well, and I used to do experiments in my class because I had been indoctrinated into your thighs have to be parallel, inner thighs have to be going back, right, tailbone down. So all of that was, kind of what we were all supposed to do. And I started thinking, I don't know about that, because for me, when I engage my glutes and the back line, I get a lot more lift and a lot more strength and a lot more stability. And I was always like, they were like, don't do that. You're going to compress your sacrum. Like, it was like, no. And for me, I don't find that to be the truth, but maybe that's also because I did ballet, turned out, for years growing up, and you're definitely, squeezing and using your ass in ballet.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so I used to do these experiments in my class too, where I would have my students do Shalabhasana. And I took a poll. I'd be like, okay, how many, do it neutral, and then everybody squeeze your ass, squeeze your butt, and let your legs turn out. And I did a poll. I'm like, who liked what? And it was like even. It was not a thing. So I really feel like it's also, it's just like it all comes back to our individual build, right? It's like what serves the individual student, and no yoga cue is going to get everybody. And some people need to squeeze their butt more, and some people don't.
Yeah. Sure, and I was chatting with it, chatting about it with my friend Erin, who's in PT school. She's about halfway through physical therapy school, and we were just, like you said, she was saying that this sort of like forbidden instruction to squeeze your butt or engage your gluteal muscles might be a product of people really engaging low back muscles too much, but not really knowing how to differentiate between what that is, and between the gluteus maximus and, let's say, QL or the multifi or the lower erectors, and we also just kind of we talked in a circle for a bit and came to the conclusion that it's just about the danger in that command, I guess, if you will, is just doing it excessively. And it, you mentioned in that article, balance, your ultimate conclusion of that article is the body is happiest when you're in balance. And that's so clear and obvious to us all now, but I also, so you told me that, initially you were being taught not to engage the gluteal muscles or the low back muscles. And then we went through this phase where people were saying to engage the gluteal muscles. And then I guess allegedly there was a point at which people were saying it too much and it became excessive. But do you have any insight on like the trends of yoga teaching and how it evolves and how that happens?
Short answer, I'll take a guess. The answer really no, but I'll take a guess.
But that's what I want. I want your guess.
Well, when I started, which was back in 1990, 1998, 2003. So when I was coming up,
1901, 1902.
1901. I look really good. It's the yoga.
It's the yoga.
But when I was coming in, it was very much don't engage your glutes too much. So that's kind of what I was taught. And I think that was because there was this feeling, it was feeling of like compression through the low back and compression through the sacrum. That was the fear of what was going on. And then, I think we're still, maybe in Vancouver, the yogis are still in the trend of engaging their glutes, because for a long time it was really like, I really just heard don't engage them. But I think now with more functional fitness coming into kind of the public mindset, at least that's what I think is happening, people have become, like, at least I can speak to my community in Vancouver, people have become more interested in the cross training, in the fitness, and bringing more fitness into yoga, for better, for worse. And so what that leads to is more focus on like lunges and squats and how you can recruit the glutes into those kinds of positions. So I think that kind of leaked into the yoga practice a bit more. To me, the only time it really feels like maybe too much to engage the glutes, it feels like they need to be engaged, but they need to be balanced with the adductors. And so, right. So that's kind of where we wind up, or as a student to play with it and say like, okay, when you do this, and I like to teach some classes sometimes with feet turned out. Like I've taught those weird classes where you actually externally rotate your front thigh in a lunge, or and really work on that, and like turn your feet out and try wheels, see what happens. Everybody, like, will someone explode? Probably not. It's like, so be curious about that. So I think that probably the kind of the functional movement kind of craze probably led to more glutes in yoga class. But I also think that in Vancouver, we're a little behind the times. Like in New York City, maybe you've gone through all of those phases. And I honestly think we're just figuring out now, like not too much with the glutes though, but you know. So.
Yeah. We in the article you write, we don't have that many movements in yoga that ask the glutes to turn on to their full potential.
Yeah.
And then you further go on and say we're obsessively lengthening this muscle as well as simultaneously not strengthening it.
Yeah.
It's like, and so that's the balance that you're trying to suggest that we strike.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's like we'll sort of do it halfway. So, like in wheel pose or bridge pose, we all do bridge poses and that's great for the glutes, but we're so focused, at least when I hear yoga cueing, it's so focused on everything staying neutral and not turning out. And yoga is a very parallel, and I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's a very parallel practice generally. We don't do a lot of poses where it's turned out, except for like Warrior 2, right? And I think that in my mind, that's fine as long as you understand that that's just the code of yoga and you need to do other movements in your body which will allow the glute to engage to its fullest capacity, which is going to be extension and external rotation to get that nice little pumpkin bum, And so, right, so as long as we understand that yoga isn't the cure-all for all movements and it's not going to provide everything in your well-balanced diet unless you actively seek to bring in some of those actions perhaps that might not be native to the tradition of the postures. So, I'm a big fan of doing lots of different kinds of movement practices and giving your body a big diet. And yoga is a big part of that, but we, need to jump up and down sometimes too, right?
Yeah. Good point. You're talking to the guy who practices the same 26 postures every single day of his life. I'm about to hit 1,000. I have to check my calendar. It's like next week, I think, is 1,000 consecutive. Yeah. Even in a pandemic, is stuck in my bathroom alone in the sweltering heat.
You are amazing. Well, how do you find it? Like, how do you feel in terms of like, do you find postures where you really get to engage the glutes in your practice?
So I think, and your background is Ashtanga, and I think there's similarities. I think, especially with the Bikram's Advanced series, it has a lot of overlap with the Ashtanga series, or from what I understand about it. I've only taken a couple of lead classes, and so I do feel like there's more muscular involvement, like as a whole, in those two types of practices compared to some of the others. Maybe, I don't know. Am I disillusional? Am I like delusional about that? I don't know. Would you agree that those two practices particularly focus on have a more balanced strength and flexibility ratio?
For Ashtanga, I'd say only once you get into second series. Like when I came back to Ashtanga, basically I started skipping a lot of first series and going right to second because I had such hamstring injuries, and so I think it really depends on your background too. Like for me, I came from a dance background, so it was a lot of hamstring opening, and then I did yoga, which was even more, right? So yeah, it's like a little recipe for, some overstretching and some weakness, right? But so Ashtanga, I don't think Ashtanga is particularly well balanced in terms of engaging the back line because it's so much hamstring opening in first series. And then later on, it gets to be more, but I guess, even so, I'd say as much as I love yoga and as much as I love it, it doesn't do, for me, I found that like one of the reasons why I injured myself so much is I was playing touch football with my family. And this is when I had been doing a lot of yoga and I ran and I tried to do dynamic running and I pulled my hamstring completely. And that was because the body wasn't ready to do like jumping or fast movements. And yoga is amazing in so many ways, but it's not good for like moving quickly, right? It's right. So yeah. So for me, that's one of the places where I think it was like a little perfect storm of kind of movement there that really pointed out my weaknesses personally with the practice.
Yeah. So I spoke with one of my mentors down here. He and his wife they fund yoga research. And what I'm hearing from you, and so I sat with him and discussed what are some good ways to find material for your yoga class? Because I'll be sitting in a yoga class and there's nothing that drives me more crazy than hearing just poor information, inaccurate anatomical or physiological information, and it's just like, oh, it just hurts. It's the chalk on the it's the fingernails on the chalkboard, and so I discussed with him the importance of like going to the source and doing the research and like finding clinical data. But it sounds to me like you have a different approach about like just being playful and experimental in class and exploring that and learning through experience. Is that accurate?
I think that's true. I mean, not always, because I do like to honor the form. Like, I'm also, as much as I like to go kind of off the whatever, this is just trying to veer outside, I also have a healthy appreciation for, this is the kata, these are the postures of yoga, this is what this form is. If you want to do something different, go to a dance class or go to that personal training session. So there's an honoring of it. But that said, for me, although the poses are really important, I think that the yoga practice can also be a place where we develop greater functionality and where we encourage students to become educated about how their bodies work. And so, I'm sort of a blend in that sense, that I like to offer those experiments in class so that students get to know their body. And also, ultimately, the purpose of yoga really isn't the postures. It's about the mindfulness. In my opinion, it's about the mindfulness that we create through that and the self-awareness, the intensity that we create sometimes in confronting ourselves. And ultimately, it's about being present. So even though I lined on both sides, because I have a healthy respect for the postures that we've been given, and that's the form of yoga. But I also feel like ultimately that's not the point either. So a little playfulness and giving students a chance to kind of, try their own thing and see what feels good for them is also that's also important. So I don't know.
I love that. We're talking about balance, and I think that's exactly right. And I can teach you all the anatomy you want, and we can sit and talk about it and philosophize about it, but you need to get on the mat and practice the yoga so that you can understand it in your body. So I love that you bring that. I've already talked with Jeff about like making sure that you are using good, solid sources, credible sources to infuse information into your teaching. And then also the other side of that is like you need to be practicing and feeling it in your body and experimenting on your own so that you have that own personal experience to also layer into your teaching. And both are equally important, I think. Yeah. Well, good. Thank you. And so the website is rachelyoga.com.
Yeah.
Clearly she got that
in
URL,
1901.
that domain. In 1901, exactly. rachelyoga.com, and she's got lots of resources there, and yeah, it's just been a treat the past couple of years that I've gotten to work with you. A lot of it is remote, but when I get to see you in person, that's always a pleasure as well. Always a nice treat.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me to chat. This is very fun to talk about. And it's great to see you.
Of course. Cool. You too.